Welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name is John.
And I'm Griffin.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about some new Trek bikes that have rear hub motors, throttles, and pretty affordable pricing.
Sounds promising.
We're also going to do a head-to-head comparison between two of the most popular fat tire e-bikes on the market.
But which ones will they be?
And then we're going to round things out by talking about some of the most fun experiences that we've had on e-bikes.
It's going to be hard to narrow it down, but we'll give it our best. All that and more in this episode's Weekly Recharge. All right, as always, starting things off with the fun finds found on the internet this week. What do we got? So, I'll take this one. Bordeaux Media. What?
Whoa.
That's an off
not
angle.
normal.
Why? I can't get beyond that question. Why?
I mean, it's easy to bail at that point if you
If you want,
something.
like, I don't know, is it Crab Simulator? This is what it's like when you're moving sideways all the time. It's just kind of a weird position for a bike. But hey, more power to you.
Weird, interesting drivetrain setup there. Kind of like the cargo aspect of it, but
Is it like an advertising thing? What's he got?
snowboard? Is that
Snowboard is under there somewhere. Maybe it's advertising because it'll turn heads. It's different. I'll give you that.
Doesn't seem natural.
Okay, next up. Aviateur 93.
Thank you, Mr.
I got
France.
the French ones. Don't you worry.
Excellent. All right.
Un génie. I've got another
All right.
DIY electric
Sort of
bike.
Conversion kit.
Digging the song too. Are we gonna
Thumping.
ride it or are we just showing it? I think we're just showing it.
I mean, it looks cool, but you don't know for sure until it actually has
I wanna
traction.
see how it runs, you know? Like,
Yeah. I do like that setup.
I mean, it could, holds promise, holds potential.
Definitely. All right,
Yeah.
next is Macho Laos Unofficial and Kika Durasova on Instagram.
Aw,
Oh,
adorable little couple.
double leg pedal.
It just kind of looks like they're in like a burlap sack race when they're moving like that, though.
It's very sweet. I like
Aw,
it.
off into the
Yeah.
sunset. I like this comment right here. And they rode right into the sunset, happily ever after. Well, all the best to you, kids.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, next up, Ugly Cycle MTB.
Fixed gear, you need to use a big
Be a
chain
fixed
ring.
gear master.
A fixed gear master can skid to a safe stop in any condition.
That
and
is
reach
ridiculously sized.
Fixed gear riders have leg muscles bigger than your torso.
That is true.
The saddle should be as high as possible, and the chain ring should be as large as possible.
Absolutely, proper form.
Sets of fixed gear. This is a typical fixed gear that you often see in Japan.
No,
Most
that's not
Japanese
typical.
fixed gear riders
I have not been to Japan, but that is not typical.
Disc wheels is mandatory. Disc wheels improve visibility and reduce the chance of traffic accidents.
Now that I could
This is
believe.
illegal anything other than a disc wheel on the rear wheel, as the spokes pose a risk of pinching your foot.
How many teeth, though?
The chainring is 120T, which is a bit
that's
small,
convenient.
but makes it more easy to skid.
It's a bit small.
Strong and reliable, and weighs only 8 pounds.
Oh, only 8.
This bike
That's
uses
good.
a 120T chainring, but 140T chainrings are more common.
Oh, good
This
lord.
bike is probably set up.
I want to see the 140T. It's also known as a wheel.
Dude, this is unreal.
Gear is perfect for everyday use.
Fixed gear, perfect for everyday use. Must be done in flip-flops, too. That's part of the etiquette.
I'm gonna say this guy is a good spokesperson for fixed gear bikes.
First dad joke of the day, folks.
Ta-dum-tsh.
Place the over-under at 3.5. Let's see where John gets to.
Okay, he's
perfect
moving.
solution. I like it.
To be a master of fixed
Oh my gosh, that just... I couldn't get around the block until my legs gave out.
Dude, seriously, I have better luck pedaling with my hands.
Okay, next up we got Just the Maker, the friend whose e-bike battery dies mid-ride.
This is an epic song.
The little buddy carrier. Where's the bike? Oh, there's the bike. Someone else
I
got
just
on
love his
the
little
holiday.
legs sticking out. There.
Those are proper friends right there. You got one person carrying you, one person carrying your bike.
Dude,
No one wants to pedal a 50-pound thing. Yeah. Always charge those batteries, folks.
seriously, wow. Well,
I would call it the weekly recharge. Make sure they're topped off, you know? Yeah.
always good. Out from outside Brendan this time.
Let's see. You never have to charge your derailleur again. Solar power!
Okay. I like this comment. Charging your derailleur, only riding east?
Only riding east, that's right. Keep the sun on at all times. I like digging the Wu-Tang Clan
Yeah.
song. It's been a while.
It's good soundtracks this week.
Seriously.
Pretty
props,
impressive.
Props to the people in the music choices. Okay, looks like our last one.
Also
Outside
from-
Brendan again.
Yep.
These custom D3O vibration damping pedals to keep my feet on no matter what.
I know D3O stuff.
Started with the design
That was in,
and then
I sold cell phones for a while. It was popular in phone cases.
Okay.
Eh.
Cut out the
Makes
shape of the pedals
sense.
from the D3O foam sheet. then installed
Okay.
a total of 18 pins for maximum grip. I inserted
Following.
the axle in the body, then glued everything together with a space age adhesive.
Space age adhesive, Gorilla Glue. That's
yeah.
right.
Fitted my shoe, and then found a rooty section of trail to run some
Okay.
tests. On the right, I had the regular pedal, and on the left, I had my custom D30 vibration damping pedal. So after 2 passes,
Following.
on the right side, we've got a maximum of 3.5 Gs, and on the left side, we've got a maximum of 2.3 Gs. Now that's
Proofs in the
Clearly
pudding.
big enough sample size to
Doing
decide
something.
anything about this, but it does give me some hope that we're moving in the right direction here.
Cool.
Awesome.
Interested to see more on that. I mean, he even said it's a small sample size.
Yeah.
Expand the sample size. I want to test it out. It looks kind of cool.
Yeah, send us some pedals. We'll try them out.
Thanks again to the team for the finds of the week. All right, let's take a look into the headlines we've got this week. Starting things off with some Trek bikes. Hey-o. So we have the Trek FX Plus One and then the Trek-owned Electra Townie Go. So some really cool stuff going on with these bikes, John.
100%.
So let's first start with the FX Plus One. So this is a 48-pound city commuter, lightweight by e-bike standards. It's available in either a high-step or a mid-step frame. It's got a very powerful Hyena hub drive on this one, 60 newton meters of torque and 500 watts of power, which is really good for this class of bike.
For sure.
Also a 520 watt hour battery. So it comes in regular and S models, which is basically just like class 2 and class 3, 20 and 28 miles per hour. There's some cool features and technology going on here as well, though. So it's got this Easy Mag charger, so magnetic connection. It's also got this really cool like LED panel. It's wall mounted, so you can actually just see from a glance if your bike is fully charged up or not, but that does detach from the wall, so you can take it with you. You've also got some tuning abilities in Trek's central app, so you can actually tune some of the power outputs. And there's even really cool battery management stuff in here too, which we don't see a whole lot of, which I actually really like.
Would love to see more of that.
Yeah. So you can kind of like set how like charged up you want the battery to be. If you want to go to 80%, just set it in like a long-term storage mode if you're not going to be riding in the winter. Some really cool stuff in there. More about the bike. It's got a 410% gear range and some hybrid gravel tires, so you can even do some light-duty gravel rides. This just looks like a very versatile, and of course, it's a Trek bike, which is kind of a big deal. Anytime they drop something new, we've tested other things out in the FX line. You did the FX2 review. I did the FX7.
Yep.
They do some really cool and interesting things, but the headline here is going to be, number one, the starting MSRP on this is $19.99. So this is Trek kind of entering a new domain for them.
Yes.
And not only that, but it's also their first bike that they have produced with a throttle. So taking some big firsts here. It feels like they're kind of taking on squarely like the Rads, Aventon Velotrics of the world that have thrived in this like 2,000 and under price point. But it looks like Trek is there to play. Now, that is just the FX, but the Townie Go has a lot of overlapping features and some similar stuff going on. This is a really refreshed and sleek-looking cruiser. If I'm being super honest, the old Townie lineup looked a little bit old. It had a lot of exposed batteries. This one, though, integrated battery. It's looking fresh. It's got 4 different color options. It has also a 500-watt rear hub motor, 60 newton meters of torque. This one comes with a MIK HD rear rack, fenders, lights, and a quad lock mount as well. So some cool features there. Also priced at $19.99. So really
Great prices,
yeah.
cool specs. I mean, the fact that they're coming from Trek makes them a go-to if you're looking for some precise fit, comfort.
Absolutely. So really cool and interesting to see kind of like what that's going to do in the marketplace as Trek kind of enters this lower price domain, setting things up for kind of a showdown between some of the more affordably priced brands with a legacy heavyweight joining them.
Definitely. We've got high hopes for both of these bikes. But moving on, let's look at a cool new project on Kickstarter. So this has been up for about a week. This is a new style of helmet that's got sort of a press fit system. It's a low profile helmet from a Dutch company that is called Head First. And the helmet is called the Echo Pro. So it's got this sort of like ratcheting thing where you sort of push in the sides and then it conforms to the shape of your head. And they kind of took this approach saying that, any other helmet that you get that's just sort of made as a standard size, there's always a little bit of wobble. You do have that like sort of cinch system that we find a lot, but even then it may not be the most comfortable fit. So their goal here was to really dial in that comfort. And then just some other pretty cool features here. Number one, the fact that it's low profile, it looks a little better than I think the big bulky mushroom style helmets that we typically deal with. But then it's set up to be able to survive multiple impacts, so that's pretty uncommon.
Nice as well, yeah.
I definitely would be curious to see
I want
that
to find out more about
testing.
that. Yeah.
Definitely. But then one reason that I really picked this to highlight here, so it has an accelerometer activated brake light in the back of the helmet. Basically any time that you slow down, it senses that change in acceleration and then turns on the brake light. And we've seen a big change in the industry, specifically like with Aventon's new line of bikes, where they've sort of switched to bikes that had brake systems that did not have motor cutoffs, and because of that, they didn't have brake lights. And I've talked a lot about that. There's a lot of kind of voices in the community that have been like, well, why did they take that away?
Yeah.
This, I think, is a really cool technology that if they could integrate that into brake systems on e-bikes, then we could get the benefits of no motor cutoff while still having some brake
I was
lights.
going to say, you're running fewer cables. It looks a little bit cleaner. Some people don't actually like the motor cutoff. People don't really need it. They're responsible enough. So
Totally.
yeah, it's kind of a light bulb moment when we actually thought about that. I was like, oh yeah, maybe we can start getting that into the
That would,
brake lights.
That would be very cool.
Cool.
But back to the helmet here. So their campaign has been running for about a week now. They have a funding goal of $22,500, and at least right now at the time of filming, they've exceeded the 18,000 mark. So by the time that this airs, there should be about 19 days if you do want to back the project. So.
Yeah, sounds awesome. In other news, there is battery swapping startup with a Yamaha backing. So this is a partnership between two companies, AnyRing and Swoby. AnyRing was started in 2023 by Yamaha and offers swappable semi-universal batteries with subscription services to promote sustainability and user-friendly experience. So Swoby provides battery swapping infrastructure and currently has over 100 battery swapping stations in both Europe and New York City. The partnership will allow cyclists with subscriptions to exchange depleted batteries for fresh ones at swap stations. Now they're planning to debut this in both Amsterdam and Berlin. And, quote here, AnyRing CEO Satoru Moriyama said, Swoby's modular swapping stations and reliable back software provide the perfect foundation for delivering on our promise of unlimited range and low entry costs for e-bike riders. This partnership allows us to hit the ground running in our target cities while ensuring a smooth and scalable user experience. And then Swoby CEO Thomas Dusha, I think, said, we are proud to deepen our relationship with Yamaha through this exciting new venture with AnyRing. Together, we're not only building smarter cities, but also setting new standards for sustainability and convenience in micromobility. So we have seen similar things from Gogoro. There are similar models in other parts of the world, like Vanmo in South America and Spiro in Africa. But this is really great for commercial purposes, in particular, people who are really using bikes, going all over town all day long. You're just going to drain the battery. You can only fit so much battery on a bike. And while, yes, we would love battery technology breakthroughs, it's also, this is kind of a more practical short-term solution.
Definitely.
Let's just let people hot swap super fast and just get back on the road. Similar to how we fill up, gas in a car and you're on your way. So hopefully some good things come from this, and, more delivery done easily on bikes with more battery swapping options.
Definitely makes sense in, densely populated cities. Wouldn't make as much sense in a place like we live, here, but
perhaps not.
Very, very cool though. And then our last story of the week is from Pirelli. So they have a new Cinturato road tire with sizes up to 55 millimeters wide. So that's over 2 inches. The new model is called the Cinturato Evo TLR, and it's made for all season riding. It's very tough. It has 60 threads per inch, and then it has 8 sizes. So the sort of low end, that's 28, 30, 32, 35, and 40 millimeter widths can be purchased now. And then the 3 wider versions, so that's 45, 50, and 55. Those will be available this summer. And then Pirelli advertises this tire as, quote, best suited for endurance and light gravel applications with secondary usage cases for performance and gravel riding. So they're made of a new compound as well. It's called the Smart Evo AS, which stands for all season. And they use a tubeless ready casing with a nylon puncture protection belt inside. And they're also compatible with hookless rims. Pirelli hasn't yet confirmed recommended rim widths for those largest sizes, though. So they also use over 50% bio-based and recyclable materials. Always happy to see that. Yeah. And they're going to cost around $93. So, tires, that's one interesting thing. I never thought I would have a favorite tire, but Pirelli actually makes a tire that I really fell in love with. It's pretty funny how that happens sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of those things. Yeah, day one on this job, you're like, oh, I'm not going to be that opinionated on tires. And then you kind of develop it eventually.
Definitely. Absolutely. But anyway, that does it for this week's news.
So each week we like to take a look at some of the gear that we use here at Electric Bike Report, and some of them are essential, some of them are fun. Today, this is definitely kind of one of those essentials that everyone should have. John, walk people through what we got here today.
Yeah, this is the Toolkit 1.1, Starter Toolkit 1.1 from Pedro's Tools. They have a whole bunch of different toolkit options and these burrito-style rolls, but this is the starter set. This is a 19-piece toolkit that comes with a waterproof burrito roll, and there's like 20 pockets inside. There's a whole bunch of variety of starter tools that you can, get to help you out when you first get your bike and then kind of add to over time. It's $199, so kind of not the cheapest thing, but also not the most expensive. But these are really good tools. They're very well made. They're precision made. And, once you buy these, you don't really have to upgrade later on. These are very, very high quality products. You might have actually seen this tool roll. It usually hangs over the back of the tool chest back there in most of our videos. But Pedro's was kind enough to send these to us to check out. We've been very impressed so far.
As you can imagine, you can kind of see with some of the smudging on like the branding and stuff like that, we've gotten a lot of use with that. Believe it or not, we actually have a lot of bikes that we assemble and work on. Go figure.
Go figure.
So this is definitely kind of like one of those things where, as John said, it's a little like on the expensive side when you first think about it, like $200. But if you've ever heard that old saying, buy once, cry once, it's like if you get the good quality stuff, it's great. We've seen a lot of different, like freebie things that come with bikes. In all honesty, I've had like these little like wrenches, almost like the nut stripped the wrench somehow, which I didn't think like it could do that, but that's just kind of what you get with like
cheap materials.
Cheap materials. Yep. So the precision stuff is really nice to have, and it comes with all your essentials here that you kind of need to get started.
Yeah, as someone like with a background in manufacturing and woodworking, that sort of thing, like there's a lot of tools out there, and bike stuff always amazes me because it's always very specialized and it doesn't really translate to other industries. So I just always really like seeing this stuff, even if I don't always get the hands-on fun with it. But there's a lot of cool stuff in here. So it comes with a set of 8 hex wrenches. There's tire levers. There's a pedal wrench. You get both a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver. There's cable cutters. There's a toothbrush. There's the chain whip with a fixed gear lock ring wrench. Yep, that's the toothbrush. There's just a ton of stuff that kind of again helps you get started, and then you can add to over time. And again, Pedro's has some larger toolkits if that's interesting to you, but this is a good place to start. So.
I was gonna say, Pedro's, it is a brand that like caters to professionals in the bike world, so you're getting good quality here. So again, check them out if you haven't seen it before. Highly recommend a burrito toolkit.
That's right.
All right, now for just a little peek behind the curtain as to what we've got in the works. So we don't have any new bikes that came in this week. We do have some that are supposedly in transit, so hopefully some updates soon. However, last week we mentioned we had just gotten the Aventure M in right before filming, and we have put that one in the testing queue, gotten some stuff knocked out on it. So far, the early returns are really promising. It's a really fun bike, so make sure you're subscribed to see the full review when that one drops.
I'm super jealous. I have not had a chance to ride that one yet, but I'm so excited about it.
I'll say it'll be coming up soon. But speaking of Aventon,
that's right.
John did have a review go live.
That was the Aventon Level 3 ST. So that was my second go around with the step-through model. I had already reviewed the high step. So this is, the same bike, just a more accessible version of it. And I was actually remarking to Griffin the other day. He asked me if we were in the warehouse, if I could choose any bike to take home, what would it be? And I said straight up the Level 3. I just personally really love that bike. So it was a joy to get a second experience with that. And, if you're not familiar, it's a just really dialed in commuter e-bike, tons of security features, including a wheel lock, a battery lock, geolocation. It's integrated 4G connectivity with location tracking and alarm system, just all kinds of stuff. I could gush about that all day long. But if you haven't seen that, I highly encourage it. We will, again, leave the link to that. I was going to say,
you were talking about cheating on your Stromer and just taking the level home instead.
I very much was considering it, yes. Cool. Anyway, let's keep things moving. All right, every week we like to highlight a place around the country and sometimes the world that has great e-bike trails or infrastructure. And Griffin, you said recently that you kind of want to do an alphabetical tour of the U.S.
Something like that. At the very least, I realized that there's just a lot of states that I, in my ignorance, don't know a whole lot about. I've lived in Utah most of my life, and the East Coast is all a big mystery to me. There's like Florida down south, and there's New York
it's
up
its
in the
own
Northeast.
thing.
Everything else is jumbled and foreign to me. So I'm trying to learn more about it, and this week I thought we would go to Connecticut, a state which I know they got really awesome like college basketball teams, and other than that, I don't know a whole lot. So
I'm nodding like I know anything.
I was like, you're not
basketball.
Anyway. I thought you were going to say about Connecticut. At any rate, wanted to look more into it, and unsurprisingly, there's lots of cool stuff here. And it's really like pretty looking area and lots of cool things. So the trail system that I honed in on was the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. This stood out to me for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it runs the entire length of the state, north to south. Technically, this trail actually continues on into Massachusetts, but I'm going to focus on the Connecticut side of things today. And also really cool because it's got an interesting history where it was a canal system, then it was a railroad, then it was a rail trail. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Little
it's
extra
kind of
layer.
gone through some evolution through the years. So let's just kind of break everything down. So the trail runs 50 miles, again, from north to south, all across the state.
That's all the bigger Connecticut is.
I guess, unless I was looking at the map wrong, but yeah, that's what I got. So
Surprising. Okay. I didn't know that.
so again, it does extend kind of beyond that and beyond the border. Now there is a couple of gaps to the trail, so you technically got to like go drive through town in some sections, but they are looking to connect that fully. So it'll be 57 total miles. So I guess the length of the state is a little bit more than that.
Okay.
So like I said, the history of it's really interesting. It was built between 1824 and 1835 as a canal with the purpose of getting farm products to market on boats that were towed by horses and mules, presumably just on the side of the canal.
That's going back
Or
a
they
ways.
put them in the canal and made them swim really fast. I don't know. History is not not fully written. But then, of course, railroads came along, which were far more efficient. And so out went the canal, then in go the railroad in about 1847, which ran up until like the 1980s. Wow. And then, finally, after the line died out, they transformed it into a rail trail in 1993 with mostly, like asphalt paving. So really cool area, too. I mean, like very diverse, which if you've been following this section, I'm always a sucker for diverse things. You kind of pass by some farms and forests, which are all within view. And, you see pockets of residential and commercial areas as well as you kind of pass through some bigger cities. Now, in terms of some of the trees and shrubs and things you can see, they've got maple trees, oak trees, white pine and hemlock, beech and birch. The Connecticut state flower is the mountain laurel, which blooms in white and pink in June. It's actually a really pretty looking flower for those who are into pretty looking flowers. Wildlife that you can find along the trail, there's white-tailed deer, which are found around dawn and dusk. You see, your typical rabbits, squirrels, even beavers and muskrats. Some of the points of interest, so there is the Simsbury Railroad Depot, which was built in 1875, which from what I read is now a restaurant. I couldn't find an actual Google listing for it, so I'm not 100% positive about that. But I'm just going to take it for its word. So if that is true, I actually really like when they do this, when they take old buildings, repurpose them so you can kind of enjoy the history a little bit. We've had a couple of those things actually like in town here, some old houses that were turned into restaurants, stuff like that. I always love going to those places. But there's also, Loch 12, a historical park in Cheshire that you can check out. This is a restored section of the canal, so you can kind of see what it originally looked like there. And then there's also the Southington Train Depot and Museum worth checking out. And then, of course, we're always big fans of hitting up state parks, and they have the Sleeping Giant State Park that you can kind of get to from not too far from the path here.
Gorgeous.
And this one is just amazing. Some of the photos they have, like in the fall with like all of the red colors that you can see and stuff, is just amazing. So if I ever go check it out, I'm definitely gonna check it out in the fall. But
man, I grew up in the Midwest where it's pretty flat and boring, and it's just really cool. It's always a little bit surprising when I see photos of like the actual like Northeast and how really rugged it can be and how much wilderness there is there. This is pretty cool, man. Thanks for highlighting.
Yeah, 100%. So, this was a really cool thing that I kind of stumbled across. Again, I'm going to maybe traipse through the states every time it's my week to do this. But again, if you have somewhere that you're so just super passionate about or very proud of, want to share with us, definitely let us know down in the comments, and we might take a look into that next week.
You can also email us at questions@electricbikereport.com.
All right, now it's time for mine and John's favorite section. That is answering questions and comments that you have left us at YouTube, back on the website, electricbikereport.com, or at questions@electricbikereport.com. Great. Starting things off here, we have from Scott Hines, who on the Velotric Nomad 2X first look review says, I have been waiting for a full squish fat tire e-bike. I was considering the Mokwheel Obsidian, but it had a cheap feel to it. I now have a Velotric Summit 1. I put 3-inch tires on it to soften off-road conditions as well as an upgraded air fork. I now have it pretty well dialed in. I'm wondering if it's worth going to the Velotric new full suspension bike, which weighs 20 pounds more. I guess my question is how this bike compares to the Mokwheel Obsidian. It was based on your review that I purchased the Yamaha Moro 07 when it was on sale. Screaming deal and a great bike, thanks. Glad you picked it up because that was a really good deal on that
Seriously, unbeatable.
But yeah, it's going to help him out though, John. What do you think?
For sure, yeah. So let's see. Looking geometry-wise, the Obsidian has a shorter reach, so that puts its riding position quite a bit more upright than the Nomad 2X. The Nomad 2X is a little bit more stretched out. Actually, was just out on a range test on that bike yesterday. One thing about the Nomad 2X that's a little bit different, though, is it has an adjustable stem, so that does give you some flexibility in adjusting the reach, the handlebar height, and the riding position. As far as handling goes, Both bikes feel pretty similar. Fat tire bikes, share a lot like that. But the Obsidian is actually a bit lighter, which is kind of surprising considering how big that bike is.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
And it also has a shorter wheelbase, so it's going to be just a little bit more nimble naturally. But again, not a huge difference between the bikes. Talking then about the sort of pedal assist system, we've gotten to the point where we really appreciate Velotric's torque sensor and their programming. They really have that dialed in these days. Although it does have a total of 15 pedal assist settings that's spread across 3 different riding modes. And we kind of feel like that might be a little bit too many as opposed to the Mokwheel's 5 basic levels. You can adjust with the Mokwheel the acceleration force of the bike, but you don't have quite that flexibility. And just the responsiveness of the Mokwheel's programming isn't quite as dialed into where Velotric's is right now.
They use, like similar quality torque sensors to other brands like in their price tier.
Right.
But their programming is definitely a lot different. It's a little bit more things on easy street, I'd kind of say. Like it's definitely got that torque sensor responsiveness. You push, you get more motor, but this one is like a little bit of push, a lot more motor.
Yeah.
So
kind of similar to Electric, I think, in some ways, but totally different bike. Anyway, so the Obsidian's motor is a 1,000-watt rear hub, and that is something to pay attention to because that technically makes it an unclassified e-bike that falls outside of the 3-class system, and that makes it great for riding off-road, gives you lots of power there, but it could require you to register it if you want to ride it on-road where you live, just kind of depending on your local laws, so be sure to check those. But the Nomad has a 750-watt rear hub. It's definitely powerful enough to handle your typical light off-roading that fat tire bikes are good for. Also has a little bit more of a natural feel just because it has that sort of less powerful but still very capable motor. Comfort-wise, again, very similar here. I think Velotric does have a slight edge there. You've got just a huge cushy saddle. You've got, an ergonomic sweep to the handlebars, nice rubber grips. The Mokwheel feels good to ride, don't get me wrong, but I just think that, Velotric kind of focuses a lot more on comfort.
And some of that could come down to your size as a rider as well. We did kind of like notice when we were talking the other day about how on the Nomad 2X, again, that reach is a little bit longer, so it's a little bit more stretched out. For me, it's not something I even registered at all. John kind of noticed it a little bit sooner than I did. I've got longer arms and longer torso. But so again, depending on that, maybe the shorter reach of the Mokwheel could be more up your alley, or maybe the Nomad, depending on your size.
Definitely. And then, as far as like performance data goes, because the Nomad 2X is still in testing, we don't have that data to share with you. Yeah. We would expect it to perform pretty similarly to the regular Nomad 2. There is a slight difference in weight there. But you could check out that review and actually reviews for both of those bikes, the Nomad 2 and the Mokwheel Obsidian, and then just see how those compare. But we might expect with the 2X, because of its heavier weight, that it would have maybe slightly less range and slightly slower climbing performance than the regular Nomad 2. But all of that said, you said that you kind of have your Summit 1 pretty well dialed in with bigger tires and a better fork. I mean, you could look at maybe just getting a suspension seat post for that bike if you really like your Summit 1. But I mean, that said, anything kind of in the Velotric line we recommend, and the Nomad 2 or 2X are gonna be great bikes, as is the Obsidian. Excellent. We recommend the Obsidian a lot on the show, actually.
Yeah,
so it's a roundabout way of saying kind of make your own decision there, but like hopefully that helps.
You could be fine with the Summit and a good suspension seat post. If you want to upgrade, it feels like the wrong term, but if you want to upgrade and go to the Nomad, early returns are looking promising, and Mokwheel's still pretty good too, but yeah. So definitely make your own decision.
Absolutely. Moving on, though, this comes to us from the Best E-Bikes for Seniors video that we put together on YouTube. So this comes to us from Diamond Delicious 710. That's a cool name. You don't really talk about why they're good for seniors. My seniors are worried about stability and acceleration being too strong, like things seniors need to know about the bikes. The last bikes we got were honestly too dangerous for them because they couldn't get on and off easy, and they accelerate too fast. What bikes are safer for them in their 70s?
Gotcha. So a couple of things in regards to specific things that were said, and then I guess just like a idea of in general of some of the challenges you could say of like putting like these types of videos and content together as it is, because we did consider a lot of factors that were not necessarily discussed in that video that does kind of address some of those concerns. We are of course thinking through safety primarily. Again, like my own parents are retired. They're almost 70 years old. everything we put on that list is something I would recommend to mom and dad to like go check out, and that does include like things like stability and like the speed and the acceleration profiles and like it's just the general stuff about being taken care of. When we're making these videos, if we go through every single list of criteria, it's going to be very good for some people. It's going to be boring for other people, and they're going to check out on the video. So
Totally,
so just do know and take comfort in the fact that we do think through a lot of these different things. So some of the criteria that we did think through on this list, again, stability and acceleration, huge concern for us. We really focused on that when putting this list together, and comfort as well was something that was very high up on this list. Older riders, older bones, all that stuff. We're trying to think that through and feel like these were all pretty comfortable and accessible bikes. So most bikes on the list are relatively upright in terms of the riding position, and they don't put too much strain or pressure on any parts of the body. Most feel similar to sitting in a chair. It's not going to be always fully upright again, but we're trying to like pick the ones that didn't have too aggressive of geometry or anything that's got you in the performance zone at all times.
Yep.
And a lot of those too also had adjustable stems, so that really helps with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course not every senior needs it, but we did pick bikes that mainly had step-through frames or the option for a step-through frame, again, just with some of the limited mobility that comes with aging. It just makes it easier for getting on and off, and we didn't want to pigeonhole that either. So again, I think in that video, if I remember right, we showed mostly like the step-through bikes, but most of them have a high step equivalent. So if you're not worried about that and you want the rigidity of that top tube, there's that option as well for most of those. And then of course, most of those options also had throttles because helpful for getting started or just taking it easy, things like that. We also picked ones that had approachable power levels. Again, some of those are a little bit on the fun, fast side. We don't want to pigeonhole everyone and say, seniors don't want to go fast. Some out there probably do. So like, the Aventure or the Electric Express are probably like pretty peppy and powerful on the top end, but still have manageable slower speeds as well. Mm-hmm. And then of course, some bikes are more stable than others. The Express was probably the one like with the most narrow tire at 2.1 inches. Yep. But in general, we were thinking of things that are wider, just give you that, wider footprint and contact patch, make it a little like more stable, be that the Discover 2's 2.4 inch or going all the way to the Aventure's 4-inch wide tires. Again, putting a premium on stability for you. So again, we try to think through all these different angles. It's just not always the most entertaining to go through the list of criteria when making a video. So hopefully there was enough in there. But you can also check out the website too, where we have that best list. We do go through a little bit more of the criteria there if you were wondering about all those things. But hopefully, again, we do feel like that list is going to meet the needs of most seniors with all the usual considerations.
And that is the goal with those videos, is to kind of do like a blanket, hey, this is best, or at least a starting point for most seniors, but don't feel like you have to fit in those categories that we highlighted. Like, if you're into different types of bikes, go for it. But I
think we got a comment like the first time we did like publish that, and someone's like, it's like some seniors ride gravel bikes too, which we didn't do like performance bikes on there. Again, it's hard to address everyone all at once. We try to address the majority though.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So the next up we have from last week's episode from Space Rock 84. Also known as a meteor. Why don't you review many wheel hub all-wheel drive e-bikes? And then frequent commenter Rick Levine jumped in. My guess is that all-wheel drive bikes tend to excel the legal limit of 750 watts. And EVR is very diligent when it comes to the legality of e-bikes. Also, a frequent commenter
Chihuang.
Thank you, Chuang. Besides legality, e-bikes with strong front hub motors are not for novice riders or people with slower reflexes. A front hub motor can yank the front wheel out from under the rider, possibly making them fall off if they're not able to compensate. So good question and good insight, and we just figured we'd kind of add a little bit more to the conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely shout out to Rick and Chow. We appreciate you guys both for adding your takes there, and you're pretty on point there. So far, we've only actually reviewed one all-wheel drive e-bike. That is the Unirao Defender S. Mm-hmm. Actually, I've never ridden that bike.
That was me.
Yeah, but I mean, Griffin, you've told me many times because I've asked the same question. Like, it's a little bit sketchy, right?
So the first experience with it was just a lot to power, and for your first time, it felt super sketchy. It is one of those things you get the hang of it and you can figure it out. But jumping on it was kind of just felt like I was gonna get bucked off by that Bronco. Like it really does fly really fast. And then of course, there's we talked about the Mokwheel Obsidian before. We've looked at bikes that do exceed the 750 watt limit. We typically try to stay within the typical class system. We've made a couple of exceptions and encourage people to ride it according to the legality of where you live. But again, things to consider.
For sure. So, I mean, I guess to build on that, we typically encourage, following the established rules, because the more people who don't, the more trouble they get into, it just kind of ruins it for the rest of us. So, we are in favor of less regulation. So, we just
more common sense, like
be smart, be safe.
Be smart, be safe. Let's all kind of go by the general rules and just we don't want everything to be hyper specific and challenging, because going state by state, we're a national audience, we're technically a worldwide audience.
Totally,
it gets harder as the rules are different all over the place.
Absolutely. And if you're not familiar with all-wheel drive e-bikes, so those are bikes that have two motors, one on both hubs. So at least based on what we've seen, brands that build these types of bikes will either use two 500 watt or 750 watt motors. So that puts their total nominal wattage at 1,000 or 1,500 watts respectively. And, at least here in the US, generally accepted legal limit for nominal wattage is 750 watts. So that would be like a single 750. The dual motors can peak often way above even those 1,000 or 1,500 watt points. And again, that just can get kind of out of control sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. So
hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
But moving on to a question from last week's episode of the show from Marion Dinwiddie. Yeah, cool. I absolutely love you two. You two fit together like peanut butter and jelly. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. Yeah. My wife and I bought some e-bikes Specialized a year ago and spent way too much money and not enough power to get up the hill at our home in the mountains. That being said, I have been obsessing on your reviews, focusing on the hill test. I think I have it narrowed down to the Aventon Aventure 3 fat tire and the Velotric Nomad 3 or 3X. I assume you mean the 2 or 2X. Yep. We would love a comparison video or your thoughts on the two. For me, I'm 57 years old, 6'2", 275, fairly good shape.
Okay. First of all, thank you. I'm going to be referring to John as Skippy now. He gets to be peanut butter in our peanut butter and jelly pairing.
I wanted to be peanut butter anyway.
Perfect.
I am a Jif guy
though. This is a really good comparison. These are two really popular bikes, so happy to make this our deep dive comparison of the week. Just a couple of things to know. So it's going to be a good comparison. Do bear with us a little bit because the Nomad is not fully done in testing on the 2X. But we can talk a little bit to the 2, which we do have testing for. But let's start off talking about their similarities for those who might not be as familiar. Both are fat tire e-bikes with 750 watt rear hub motors and torque sensors. Both are class 2s and can be adjusted to class 3. Both have aluminum frames and both a high step or a step through styling with 26 by 4 inch puncture resistant knobby tires. They both have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, 8-speed Shimano drivetrains, throttles, suspension forks, integrated lights with brake lights and turn signals. They come with fenders, with cargo racks, and estimated ranges in the 65-mile ballpark. They have Bluetooth connectivity, smartphone apps, color displays, and are fully UL certified. So as you can see, there is a lot of overlap there. I can kind of understand why you're narrowing it down to these two bikes, but there are subtle little differences under the hood and just their overall characteristics and profiles, I'd say. So we'll kind of go more granularly and go spec by spec and then through the testing. I'll take the Aventure 3 side of things, and John, I'll let you take the Nomad 2. And again, that's going to focus a little more on the regular Nomad 2 for right now. We'll get there with the X. But
most of the things are the same.
A lot of them are the same, but just remember, official testing and stuff.
For sure.
Nomad 2.
Yeah.
So starting things off, the motor differences. So they both have 750 watt nominal, but the Aventure has an 1,188 watt peak with 80 newton meters of torque.
And then the Nomad 2 goes a bit higher at 1,300 watts for the peak watts and 90 newton meters of torque.
Mm-hmm. And then over on the battery side of things, the Aventure 3 has a 36 volt system. It is a 733 watt hours though, and it does lock into the down tube. It's removable via either display or the app.
Yep. And then on the Nomad 2 side, that's a 48 volt electrical system. The battery is 706 watt hours, and it is IPX7 waterproof.
And then taking a closer look at the drivetrains, the Aventure 3 has a Shimano Altus derailleur, 48 tooth chainring, and 12 by 32 tooth cassette.
And then on the Nomad 2 side, you have a Shimano Acera derailleur, which is just one step up. The same size chainring, 48 tooth, and then the cassette's a little bit wider with 11 to 40 teeth there.
And then over on the suspension side of things, the Aventure 3 has a zoom fork with 80 millimeters of travel, and it's a coil suspension. It has a suspension seat post as well with 50 millimeters of travel.
Yep, and then on the Nomad 2 side, you have an RST fork that has a little bit more with 100 millimeters of travel. And then instead of the sort of single coil style suspension, this is a rocker style with also 50 millimeters of travel.
And then looking at the brakes, so the Aventure 3 uses the Tektro HDE 3520 system. It's a 2-piston, 180 millimeter rotor front and rear.
Yep, and the Nomad 2 has the Tektro TDK 171 system. That's also 2-piston, but it has a 203 millimeter rotor up front and then a 180 mil rotor on the rear.
Tires, again, they're both 26x4, but you're getting Innova with the Adventure 3.
And Kenda on the Nomad 2.
So pretty comparable there.
Yep.
Sizing and weight capacity. So on the Adventure 3, it comes in 2 different sizes across 2 different frames, which accommodates riders from 5'3" up to 6'4". The bike weighs about 78 pounds and a 400-pound payload capacity. And just as a quick side note, there is also going to be the Adventure M that we discussed earlier that will be releasing later this year. So there are some other things to check out there, but just that note.
Yeah, and on the Nomad side, of course, we mentioned the 2X that we're not covering so much here, but will be coming out later. But the regular Nomad 2 also has 2 sizes. The height range for that is 5'2" to 6'5". It weighs 84 pounds, and then it has a crazy 505-pound payload capacity.
And then just in terms of some of the lingering extras, so the Adventure 3, it has the ACU or Event and Control Unit, which has like passcode, security, the ability to lock the wheel, to lock the battery, some motion detection alarm system, geofencing, and a 59-pound capacity cargo rack.
Yep, and on the Nomad 2 side, there's the adjustable stem there. You have Apple Find My technology for security. There's a cruise control function, and then you have an MIK HD cargo rack. So that's compatible with a ton of like third-party storage and passenger accessories. And then that has a higher 66-pound payload capacity.
Okay, now let's take a look into the performance side of things as well. So in terms of speed and programming, so the Adventure simplifies things. There's just 3 assist levels. They are customizable though in terms of the output and like the sensitivity levels. So you can really kind of like dial it into how you want to ride. Sam, we found the standard programming to be pretty well balanced, but again, just kind of nice that you can dial it in a little bit more if you do use the app.
Yep, and then with the Nomad 2, so kind of interesting here, this has both torque and cadence sensors, so they have the sensor swap feature that allows you to really change up the feel of the ride by switching which one is primary there. There are 3 riding modes, Eco, Trail, and Boost, and then each of those has 5 pedal assist settings, so again, that's 15 total, so granular adjustment there, and then mostly well-balanced, evenly distributed speeds and powers, but in the Class 2 torque sensor speed test, that did seem, fairly limited by the 20 mile per hour cap there.
Yeah.
But then you do have the ability to adjust speeds by 1 mile per hour through the app or the display.
And then let's go ahead and take a look at how they did in range testing. So the Adventure 3 came back with results of 36 and 60 miles. Pretty good range there.
Yep. And the Nomad 2 was 24 and 67.
You can kind of see, like, if you're using high power, the Adventure 3 gives you a little bit more. If you're someone who keeps it low and slow most of the time, though, you can eke out a little bit more range on the Nomad too.
Yep, makes sense.
And then over on our hill test, so the Adventure 3 had some really good times there. It went up the test hill in just 1 minute and 17 seconds on throttle, and then shaved that time down to 1 minute and 9 seconds when using pedaling on max assist.
Yep, and then with the Nomad 2, we tested it only in the torque sensing mode, but you could switch that to the cadence for possibly faster times. But on the torque sensing mode, we had 1 minute and 25 seconds on throttle, and then 1 minute and 12 pedaling.
So both of those are really good and strong hill climbing performances. There's just a little bit better on the Adventure, but again, the Nomad could possibly go a little bit faster on cadence mode, TBD on that. But again, both did pretty well. Mm-hmm. And then over on the brake test, so the Adventure 3 stopped in 21 feet and 6 inches on average.
The Nomad 2 is 20 feet and 9 inches.
So both of those are good and under the fat tire e-bike category in both cases. So you're not really going wrong one way or the other, I'd say. Again, keep in mind that the Nomad has the edge with that larger front rotor, but that's there to help offset some of the
extra weight.
And then just in terms of ride quality, so kind of breaking it down, the Adventure 3 it's just lighter and shorter, so it's a little bit more nimble feeling as juxtaposed to the Velotric. The regular frame is more upright, and the large frame is a little bit more forward-leaning. It's got a sportier saddle, so some good suspension overall, and the pedal assist is just really responsive, and the app is kind of like essential to accessing all those really nice features, but again, some really enhanced security stuff that you're getting there.
Yep, and then on the Nomad 2, just because it's a little bit larger and a little bit heavier, it is slightly more planted and a little bit less nimble. But then you have the adjustable stem to kind of customize the fit and your positioning. A super comfy, cushy saddle, and again, either a suspension seat post or the full suspension if you go with the 2X. And again, really liked that rocker style seat post. Just tends to be a little bit more natural feeling than springy. The pedal assist system is almost as responsive. It's very close there. At least in the higher settings, and then you also have that cadence sensor option to really allow you to relax into the ride and really not have to pedal so actively. And then the app is great. It has a lot of great features, a lot of similar features, even integration with things like Strava and Apple Health. But it's not as essential to owning the bike as with the Aventons, I'd say.
So in terms of our recommendation, that we've kind of gone through everything. It goes without saying, both of these are really great bikes. We think they were both really good performers, great value for your dollar.
Yep.
This is one of those moments where you can happily reassure you, you're not going to go wrong picking either of them. But kind of getting into the heart and the essence of it, the Adventure 3 to me is just something that feels a little sportier.
Yeah.
The handling is like, all things relative, it's still a fat tire e-bike, but it's a little bit more nimble. It's a little bit, more lively, kind of compared to the Nomad. It's just, again, it's sporty. It feels a little bit more aggressive, but at the same time, you can still have a nice, easy, and relaxed ride if you want on it. Some of the security features on there, again, just super uncommon to see that on a bike under $2,000. Like a 4G enabled chip, you can get all sorts of security set up on it to make sure that it is secure. Even if you're like away from it, your bike will give you a notification, hey, someone's like moved it, or it's outside of the riding area. Like you get all this really cool stuff with it. So just some really good features there to kind of consider if that matches with you.
Yeah, and then on the Nomad 2, we'd probably recommend that to anyone who wants a little bit of a bigger focus on comfort as opposed to that sort of sporty feel. And then also just, if you don't want to have to really use the app to get all the features, a lot of the same things that are available through the Velotric app are also available through the display there. So you don't have to really worry about that if you don't want to. And then, if you want the ability to switch between both the torque and cadence sensing modes, that is a go-to. And then, of course, as long as you don't mind the extra weight. But just to kind of add to those things, both of these as fat tire e-bikes, they both have great climbing performance. They were pretty similar in terms of range, but differed on the high and low end. So those would be some areas to consider. But both of them are going to be extremely versatile, allowing you to commute, adventure on the weekends, pick up some groceries, whatever you really want to do. That's the beautiful thing about it.
All the things people love about fat tire bikes, they kind of do them all well. So
yep.
Yeah. So but hopefully that helps. Ultimately, let us know which ones you end up picking. We'd be very curious to see which one more aligns with you.
Definitely.
All right, so next one, this comes from Derek Hart from last week's episode saying, loving the weekly update, guys. Thank you, Derek. This is a question about weight capacity for suspension e-bikes. Having higher capacity seems like a good thing, but for lighter rides, I find a lot of bikes to be oversprung, resulting in a rough ride. Any tips on selecting spring rate based on rider weight and suspension style?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we'll get into some numbers here, but just do keep in mind that the bottom line is that your own personal feel and comfort is going to be kind of king there. And just the numbers are going to vary a bit depending on who you talk to. So, this will be kind of a starting point, but,
yep.
We'll go from there. But the degree to which you can really kind of customize the feel of your suspension is directly proportional to, the quality and price of the components. So, you usually get some compression adjustment on shocks, but, on the cheap end, suspension forks have no adjustability. And then you kind of have to step up a couple tiers to get something that allows you a rebound adjustment, which seems like kind of what you're primarily interested in there. So, you want to really start off by adjusting the sag in the suspension, which is, how the suspension compensates for your weight, how much it compresses when you sit on the bike. So with your fork, it's recommended to be at about 15 to 20%. And then for a rear shock, it's recommended to be somewhere in the 25 to 30% range. So on a fork with 100 millimeters of travel, you'd want 15 to 20 millimeters of sag. And then if your shock has 50 millimeters of travel, that would be 13 to 15 millimeters of sag there. So start by adjusting that, and then after that, you want to adjust the rebound. And then, again, just we kind of recommend going by feel, but dial it in, all the way, and then kind of dial it back until you find it comfortable. Take it to a place that you ride regularly, a place where there is, some roughness, and just kind of make a few passes, adjust, and then do it again, and kind of go until it feels comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that kind of helps the general starting points. Again, just John really hit the nail on the head. Just find what kind of works for you. Go off basic recommendations. Like for me, one of the downsides of my job is because I'm on so many different bikes all the time that usually when I go back to my own bike, my Trek Rail, I'm like, I don't remember what I was supposed to set this to. I got to look it up every time. So I like to just kind of recommend, if you have a Fox or RockShox or whoever it is you have, you can always look at their website. They'll give you some recommendations.
That's a good place
to start. And then just make micro adjustments up or down. As long as you're not going to extreme ends, you don't want to blow out the shock or anything like that, obviously. But just kind of play with it and see what feels best for you. But yeah, it's a good starting point though.
Definitely seems good. And then our last question of the week comes to us also from last week's episode of the show. This is from J Pro is 26.3. Okay. Question for fun. Which e-bike or bikes do you each find to be the most fun?
Oh, sweet. First of all, I like fun questions. Keep some fun outside the box questions coming. So,
absolutely.
I'll let you give I'll just give mine. So the ones that came to my mind first are in no particular order. Fun makes me think of the Jackrabbit.
100%. That was my go-to. Yeah.
The Jackrabbit's a weird thing because, like, for me, it's like I don't know that I would ever personally buy it, but the fact that I have access to it, I freaking love that thing. It's so much fun to ride. Like, if it is within someone's budget and like they understand like what it's all about, like it's last mile stuff. It's your get me from the bus stop to
I want to say
like that.
It was when you first tested it, but now with the Range Buster batteries, it's not that anymore.
That is fair. I'm largely like thinking of the OG, the first one that I tested. We tested a couple. Well, John's tested.
I did
a couple
the XG.
since.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a surprisingly fun bike. I actually hate usually feeling oversized on things. I don't like the clown car, like big dude, little like bike sensation. But the Jackrabbit really was just a lot of fun, and I still think it is. So that's like the first one that comes to mind. But there are like so many like things. Obviously, I talked about my Trek Rail. It's a terrific bike. I really like it. It is fun every single time I take it out, so I really enjoy that. Some just kind of like big watershed moments like in my mind. The Ride One Up Rev 1 was like the first time like I really enjoyed like a moped style e-bike. Just hitting the throttle and taking off on that thing, especially the dirt edition
that thing is punchy as hell.
I have so much fun on that bike. It is such a good time. The Pivot Shuttle AM was maybe like the first time that as a professional reviewer and evaluator of a bike, I got off it and I was like, I don't know what you're supposed to change on this thing. This thing feels perfect. Like it's still such a good bike in my mind. And then just like some early on first, like the Go Cycle was like a big like deal to me. I was like, holy cow, that thing this is fun. This is like the bike of the future and stuff like that. Also, weirdly, like the Hemingway Cruiser, it was like the first time I got on something super powerful, and like, you know, but by today's standards, I'd probably knock it because it's not, maybe it's too much power, like or whatever. It's not as refined, but like, man, at the time, it was just so much fun to just like pedal or slam the throttle and just zip. Like that was the first bike with serious punch. And then also, last but not least, the Evelo Delta X is the other one I jotted down. It was like my first experience with, an NVLO shifter, like internally geared hub and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was also a really powerful bike. I thought it was kind of an underrated one. I had a lot of fun with that as well. So that's my trip down memory lane, like bikes that I just think of as fun. But.
We definitely have some overlap there. I mean, again, Jackrabbit was the first thing that I thought of, just because like it feels like a toy in the best possible way. Like it's like the thing that you open up on Christmas morning and you just wear that childlike grin the whole time that you're on it. It's impossible not to. And I think the Rev 1 was similar. Again, the dirt, holy smokes, that thing is super cool. But then, you know, kind of going on the premium end of the spectrum, because I think that's where a lot of my tastes lie, even if my wallet doesn't agree with me. But like the Stromer ST5 Pinion that I reviewed and the Stromer ST2 that I bought.
You mean the $12,000 bike?
The $12,000, yes, exactly. And then the $6,500 bike, the Specialized Turbo Vado SL2 Carbon. Both of those had just, to me, just the most dialed in pedal assist experience that really gives you that beautiful thing where it makes you feel like you're the one pedaling up to 25 or 28 miles per hour, but the motor is helping you. It's almost indetectable. It just makes you feel like Superman. It's very cool. The Le Mans Prologue was really cool. That was, I think, my first experience on a carbon bike, but I just distinctly remember doing the range test for that. And there was a moment where I was riding and I just had this sense of like floating, like the bike wasn't even there, and it was a really memorable experience. And then even, something like the Ride One Up Roadster V3, I just, we've talked about this in the office a lot recently, that when we started here, started riding e-bikes, the big, powerful, fast ones were our go-to, but then over time, exactly. Those were what we gravitated to up front, but then as, we've spent more time and gotten in better shape and everything, that, we've really grown to appreciate the sort of lighter pedal assist, the more active, engaging rides, and the Roadster V3 is kind of like a really happy marriage between those things, where it gives you power, it's very responsive, but it is very light and nimble, and just, it's just a beautiful ride. So, again, we really appreciate questions like this. It's really fun to dive into things that, relate to our experience.
And then just a reminder to keep questions coming either at the website, YouTube comments, or at questions@electricbikereport.com, and we'll jump into your questions next week, hopefully.
That's right. All right, Griffin, it's time for Deals of the Week. Deals of the Week.
All right.
We actually got some cool things going on this week. So Aventon has a clearance / Memorial Day sale going on. There's still a lot of good deals on some older models. We've talked about these before, but so the Level 2, the original Abound, and the Pace 500.3 are down to $15.99. So some of the best deals out there. And then this is the first time that I've seen the Rambless on sale. That is $200 off, which is down to $25.99.
Cool.
Pretty good deal there.
I say if you're looking for a hardtail EMTB, that is a great one.
Yes.
But Ride One Up is also doing their Memorial Day sale. It kind of goes without saying, but it's a holiday weekend. There's going to be a fair amount of like sales out there.
For sure.
But what caught our eye, as John mentioned earlier, the Roadster V3 is one of our favorite bikes we've tested in the last year or so. It is $100 off down to $13.95. So really awesome deal on that one. Lightweight, powerful, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
They also have an older model, a Prodigy V2 chain drive that is $400 off down to $2,095. Another really good bike, Broza mid-drive motor, just kind of a good like all-arounder, almost like touring style bike. A lot of the different things you can do with that one. So another one worth taking a look at if you want something a little bit more versatile.
Absolutely, and I feel like we kind of talk a lot about the same companies a lot of times in this section. So I wanted to kind of do a little bit deeper dive this week.
It's not our fault; they're the ones who have the sales.
It's true, no, 100%. But I'm really glad I stumbled on this one. Turn, who makes a bunch of cargo bikes, they have the Tariff Relief Act going on. Basically, in the short-term future, they're looking at a 10-ish% increase in prices. But before that, they kind of worked with their suppliers to negotiate some reductions. So the Aurochs S12, if you're looking for a huge, do-it-all fat tire,
this is like the
mid-drive,
bike packing bike of all bike packing bikes. If you want to like go off-road on something that can haul tons of weight.
Yes, it's an amazing bike, a beautiful Bosch mid-drive system.
Beautiful Mosh?
Mosh, yeah.
Mosh, all right.
Anyway, this bike is $1,000 off, down to $54.99, which is still pricey, but trust me, that thing is awesome. And then the Quick Haul Long D9 is $500 off, down to $32.99. So
I was like, Turn makes some really awesome stuff, so those are some really good deals. But
they also stand up vertically.
They
It's
do.
very cool. I love that party trick.
I was gonna say it's always a good time. So that's gonna do it for the deals of the week. All right, so you guys watch a lot of videos of me and John riding around and talking about bikes that we're testing out, but every week we like to take a look at someone else and a cool story involving their own bike or something like that. So John, who is our rider of the week?
So yeah, this week is going to be a little bit different. Most of the time we choose from the comments that we receive out there, highlight someone with a really cool bike story. This time I actually just happened to stumble across a news article back from my old stomping grounds in the Phoenix area. So this week we're going to be talking about Andrew Huxtable, who lives in Queen Creek, Arizona. So that's kind of on the south side of Phoenix. And every single day he commutes 125 miles round trip to the sort of north side of Phoenix, where he works as a firefighter in Fountain Hills. He starts his commute every day at 2 a.m. It takes him 4 hours one way, and he even builds in 30 minutes of extra time in case he runs into any like mechanical issues or flats.
Smart.
Yeah, he does this to basically stay physically and mentally sharp. He says actually the mental side of things is a little bit more important to him, although obviously biking that much is going to keep you fit. And then he had a cool quote here that I appreciated. He says, "I need to work my whole life. I love it. It's my time before work that I enjoy, and it gives me a chance to think about the day. I think about what's going on in my life personally as well as professionally, and I love the time on the bike." So, I mean, man, obviously that's something for all of us to aspire to. Not that I think I want to start my day at 2 a.m.
I don't personally aspire to 125 miles per day, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, 100%. Very, very cool story. And Andrew, no idea if you're watching, but if you are, shout out, good job, and appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we like to feature someone new here every week, and that includes from members of our own audience.
Yep.
So write to us, let us know what it is you're riding, where you're riding, or just something cool about bikes, and hopefully we'll be sharing that next week.
That's right.
All right, so Skippy and I just want to say thank you for following along.
Wow. Jiffy, thank you.
Jiffy, I forgot you want to be Jiffy. So Jiffy and I just want to thank you for following along on this week's episode. And just as a friendly reminder, you can also catch this in audio form across Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, go subscribe to us there if you haven't yet. Help us grow that channel. Speaking of growing channels,
We just crossed 95,000.
that's right, we did. We're seeing actually a surge of subscribers, a little bit higher than usual. So I like to think that's thanks to you guys for sharing it out there. So thank you so much, and keep sharing it. Help us get to that 100,000 mark. We would really appreciate it.
We're so close. We're so close. But anyway, we appreciate you tuning in this week. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the links down in the video description to read more about any of the bikes we talked about. Send us photos, stories about you and your bike. We'd love to highlight you. But that does it for this week's episode of the Weekly Recharge.